many people, the risk of coronavirus has meant embracing loved ones has become a distant memory, and we miss it, don't we? All that is set to change because the Prime Minister is expected to announce today friends and family will be able to hug once again from next Monday. But is it too soon? Should we be using more caution when it comes to easing restrictions? We're joined now by a Senior Lecturer of Epidemiology, Dr Deepti Gudasani, who believes it's negligent to allow hugs too early, and the co-founder of parental campaign group Us For Them, Christine Brett, who believes hugging is an important part of life. Well, welcome to you both. Dr Gudasani, people are desperate to give each other a hug. You're suggesting even next week is too early. When is it safe?
I really feel for wanting to hug people. I haven't hugged my own brother, who's clinically extremely vulnerable and lives 10 minutes from me for the last 16 months. And I think we all want to return to normal. The problem is that returning to normal has been based on the government actually getting on top of the pandemic, which means, containing transmission, bringing it down to low levels, and preventing adaptation of new variants and import of new variants, and when they arise, to get on top of them. Unfortunately, we're now in a situation where none of that has happened, and we have a new variant growing within the UK. So cases of this new variant are now doubling every week within the UK, while other variants are dropping, and overall our cases have been dropping, which shows that even with current restrictions in place, this variant is growing very, very quickly. In London, 50% of cases now are no longer the so-called Kent variant, and we don't, for example, at this point, to know how effective our vaccines are against this particular variant. And we know that it's causing devastation across many parts of the globe, particularly in the South Asia region, in Nepal, in India.
So we have this new variant you're worried about. You're worried about transmission. Do you think the government should today, instead of saying from next Monday you can all give each other a hug, do you think the government should actually say we've reconsidered and actually you can't hug until next month, for instance?
So the government said they were following data, not dates. And one of the points in their roadmap was looking at variants of concern. I can't possibly imagine anything more concerning than a variant that we don't know very much about in terms of vaccine efficacy and transmissibility that's increased from 0% frequency for weeks ago to being almost dominant in many parts of the UK now. If this is not a point for concern and a point to reconsider easing of restrictions, I don't know what would be.
Caroline Brett, do you think there is a danger that the combination of the fact that a lot of people now have had their first dose and many people have had their second dose is making people maybe a little bit complacent, and that allied to a message from Boris Johnson today saying OK to hug, that actually that could lead to the sort of problems that Dr Gudasani is talking about?
Well, I think hugging is what makes us human, isn't it? And I think we have to remember that whilst, about these variants, actually we need to remember that the latest data show that only 0.8% of people are actually carrying the virus now. So 99.92% of people don't have it. And you can't get the virus, from somebody that doesn't have it. We also need to remember that 2/3 of all adults have had the vaccination, and 90% of those over 70 have had the vaccination. So I think we have to put this into some kind of perspective. Children have been, not looked on favourably in this pandemic at all, and they've been penalised. 15 months in the year of a 4-year-old is actually 1/3 of their life, and we're in danger of hardwiring children to stay away from people. We know that children need a cuddle when they've fallen over. We know that touch is very important, which is why we give skin to skin care when babies are born. It's really important that we get our lives back to normal and put this into some kind of perspective, because we're at danger that some people won't ever get that last hug with somebody because it will just be too late, and that will be terribly sad for those people because they've just been scared from having what is essentially a very human need met by hugging and embracing a loved one.
Dr Gudasani, you'll know it's Mental Health Awareness Week, and I was talking recently at a conference, and there was a child psychologist and psychiatrist there who said that actually babies' brains are changing shape at the moment because of the impact of the pandemic. And we don't know what the consequences of that are going to be, because we raise children through civilization to run to their parents, to run to their siblings, to touch, to kiss, to hug. And that the longer that we stop that happening for young children, and them growing up with their parents in masks, that's going to have a profound effect. And shouldn't we be trying everything to kind of ease it for them?
Yes, absolutely. And the way to do that is essentially to get on top of the pandemic and we have people living normal lives in places where the pandemic has been brought under control, but the government hasn't managed to do that. And, I hear everything we're talking about children's mental health, and, they do have that level of contact right now in schools. And the best way to actually do this is essentially to manage transmission in those settings. And I find it really disingenuous for them saying that, because they've been campaigning for example, not having masks in schools, and the fact that they think that children are not at risk. We have an estimated 43,000 children living with long COVID in the UK, many with debilitating illness. Many live with crippling anxiety of infecting their clinically vulnerable parents. I'm not talking about an indefinite pause on this. I'm saying that we need to protect everyone, including children, from infection, because they also suffer effects. Their parents suffer effects, their grandparents suffer effects. And actually, half the population hasn't been vaccinated. 25% of our population has been fully vaccinated. 50% have received one dose. And the current variant that's almost dominant in many parts of the UK, we don't even know the effectiveness of these vaccines again. And yeah, we have a very low infection rate at this point in time, but we know how quickly that can change with a new variant. We saw this happen in December. So that was just 5 months ago. Yeah. And if we don't prevent that happening, actually children could be in a much worse situation if we had another lockdown, or if schools had to close because transmission was at high levels. So we have to look at the long-term mental health impact on people. Is this sort of short-termism of dichotomy between economy and
yes, it is always a balance. Christine, the Duchess...
It's not a balance, because if we get on top of the pandemic control, life can return to normal, which is the best for people's mental health, better for the economy, better for our society, and better for children. Okay, so that's not dichotomy.
Okay, the Duchess of Cornwall, Christine, admitted, "I have had a hug," she said to the Daily Telegraph. "I am doubly jabbed, so..." And then she paused. "We've had a sort of half hug," when she was talking about her grandchildren. I wonder, Christine, whether there actually might be a number of people who have, maybe had a little half hug. Have you sort of strictly stuck by the rules throughout the entire ban?
Of course, people who, are vaccinated, and DP is actually incorrect. It is a third who have had both vaccines and 2/3 that have had one, according to the latest data released on Friday. Of course, they will have hugged their grandchildren. This is what grandparents live for, hugging their grandchildren, and we've deprived them of that. We've isolated them of that for 15 months. To say that we're not on top of the virus when 99.92% of people aren't carrying it, I think is quite ludicrous. We know that we need to manage our way out of this. Children have been massively affected. We know that schools follow community transmission, which is very low. It's the lowest it's been since September. And we do have a large proportion of the population vaccinated now. There's no data to show that the vaccine isn't effective against these variants. And I think we need to start living again. We can't just be waiting forever. Some people don't have that chance. And many people over the last year have lost the opportunity to hug a loved one because they were too frightened by the virus. And it's actually fear and anxiety that's been driven by some of these measures rather than the virus itself that's causing a lot of problems. And I think we need to think about that now. It's not good enough to say, well, we'll sort it out, in a few months' time. It's too late. You're right. Children's brains are being hardwired now to fear people. And that's very damaging. We shouldn't fear people that we love.
We know that from what Michael Gove said yesterday, that the Prime Minister is likely to say, yes, from next Monday, you can have that more intimate contact with people that you haven't been able to touch over the course of the pandemic. But I do think it is true that a lot of people will feel nervous about that. Listening to what you say, they will be worried about transmission. Is there a way, for instance, of safely hugging someone who is a little bit more vulnerable, an older relative? Would you have advice other than don't hug at all?
I don't want to hug with a mask.
For instance, should you wear a mask if you're going to, you know, get the kids to hug their grandparents?
I mean, I just want to address one point before I say that, because Christine said we don't know that this vaccine is not effective against this new variant. We also don't know that it's effective against this new variants. And while cases are low, they're at the level they were in September, where they quadrupled within 4 weeks. This is an exponentially growing pandemic, and we need to remember that. And we have a actual variant cases that are doubling every week in the midst of current restrictions. So as an epidemiologist, I'm very concerned. The second thing I want to say, yes, regarding safe hugging, I mean, I don't want to put out the message that there is a way to eliminate risk, because there isn't, because ultimately this is a virus that spreads through breathing. And when you come close to somebody, you're breathing in their close vicinity, and they're sort of breathing in aerosols that you are breathing out. But I would certainly recommend, yes, please wear a mask and minimize that contact if you can. Don't face them if possible. And, you know, there are other ways of hugging family members as well, like forming bubbles with them, which I think is the safest way, because that means that, you know, you are kind of not coming into contact with many other people and reduces those sort of transmission networks.
Do you agree? Do you agree with Dr. Anthony Fauci, the White House's advisor on this, that we should never shake hands again?
No, I don't agree with that, because I think that, again, that depends on getting pandemic control. There are countries that are having rugby matches where people, you know, can socialize, people can hug, people can shake hands. All of this is down to the political will to contain the pandemic, which unfortunately the US, the UK, much of Europe has failed to do.
Well, thank you for that.